Hey there, Internet friends, and welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me this week is Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cameron?
Hey, what's going on, nerds?
What is going on? So today's show is going to be, probably on a little bit of a lighter side. We're going to be talking a little bit about the big Overwatch League tournament that happened recently. I know Cameron's been getting into that, Burn Blue and all that. Woohoo! Cameron also been playing and finished Borderlands 3. And then there's going to be some excitement for the Mass Effect Legacy edition coming up. As for me, we'll talk about this, I guess, a little bit. I've just been basically playing like comfort games and watching comfort shows and reading comfort things because nothing new has really been grabbing me. So, had I recorded another quick solo episode like I might have originally intended, it would have been me just talking about like that. Hey, sometimes the new things don't hit, and that's okay. But Cameron was like, "Hey, I can talk about some stuff." So here you get a twofer episode. Hooray! But before we dive into that, a little bit of housekeeping. If you like what you hear, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends. And if you're feeling extra generous, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, just like our wonderful Patreon producers do. And I also want to give a special shout out to everybody who has supported us and subscribed to us on YouTube. We hit 300 subscribers this last week, so yay! I imagine at least half of those are probably bots and stuff, but still, yay!
We'll take them.
300 subscriber milestone. So
we will take them gladly.
Yeah, and that was like 50 plus of them. I think were in the last 30 days per the metrics and stuff. So we hit some kind of like some hill, and we're just going downhill, and the snowball's just piling up. It seems. But anyway. So yeah, Cameron, kick us off with some Overwatch League. I've seen our friend Andy Cortez very excited about what's been going on, and hence the Dallas Fuel Burn Blue stuff I referenced earlier. But I clearly do not actually still watch or anything like that, or never watched, so nothing new there.
Yeah.
But yeah, tell us what's been going on with the May Melee. Was it May Melee?
It's so there's a character named May. Her name is not in there at all. It's just May, May Melee.
She was just the special skin that they came out for the event.
It's because her name is May and it's fun. You know they're cheeky like that a little bit. So it is a really difficult time for the Overwatch League still. We are still unfortunately dealing with the fallout of the pandemic. And so this season they opted to go for a shorter season, and rather than having, last season, the idea of, hey, let's just do some tournaments to help, to just, make things a little bit different and more interesting since we can't do our homesteads and we can't be on the same LAN in person. So what ended up happening was they had a few tournaments, and it turned out really well. So when they put together the season, like this current season, still not able to do homestands, still we won't, till season 5, we won't see in-person same LAN Overwatch, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. We just have to live with it. And so what they did is they built up around, instead of doing different stages like they've done in the past, they've now built it out. So there's going to be 4 major tournaments, the first of which is the May Melee. And the tournaments are part of the regular season, but they also determine, by completing the tournament and competing in the tournament and winning it, you get your kind of what was previously known as stage bonuses. But it's done a little bit differently, so I won't get too into the minutia on that, and I'll just move into what we saw this past weekend. So everybody since the beginning of the season has been playing, getting ready for the May Melee, which is the tournament. You had to qualify for it. The teams that ended up qualifying for the May Melee itself were the top 2 seeded teams in each region: APAC, the Asian Pacific region, and the North American region. The top 2 teams for Asian Pacific were, in fact, the Shanghai Dragons and the Chengdu Hunters. Both eking out very close victories over the Seoul Dynasty, which came in third, unfortunately. Then you have in North America, the top 2 teams to come through there were the Florida Mayhem and the Dallas Fuel. Now, for those of you who have been around for a long time, like I have, you remember Season 1, the 3 bottom teams were in order, Dallas Fuel, Florida Mayhem, Shanghai Dragons. Shanghai Dragons, of course, having the worst competitive record in sports history. Period. Like they do. They went 41-0. Or 0-41, I should say. They never won a single match the entire first season of Overwatch League. But in doing so, they kind of garnered this underdog fan base that is, now that as a top team, they're prospering and everybody loves them. There's a lot of interesting things that happened over the course of this last season break. A lot of, not controversial, but a lot of like very curious trading happened. Dallas, which previously had been a hybrid style team where they had Korean players as well as other national players, decided to change up things, went full Korean roster, and made some really big money plays to basically reunite one of Overwatch League contenders' premium. That's the tier 1 or the tier 2 scene, so like the your AAA ball rather than your MLB. Your sub league for the like teams that are put together, and like professional teams will look at those teams to see who they're going to sign for the new season.
The minors.
So one of the minors, thank you. The minor league is the contenders scene in Overwatch. One of the best teams of all time that really never got an opportunity to take a championship anywhere was this team called Element Mystic. And their team, a big chunk of their team and staff got picked up and bought by what would become the Paris Eternal for Season 3. And in a very harebrained move, the Paris team owners actually basically fire-sailed their entire team and organization to a bunch of different teams, but a big, massive chunk of them got sold to the Dallas Fuel. So Dallas Fuel all of a sudden did that. Now they made a couple other big plays. Shanghai was only going to keep one of their star main tanks from Season 3. And they chose to keep a tank called Fate. And they let go and traded over to Dallas Fuel a player named Fearless. Fearless has a redemptive story arc where Season 1 he was with the Dragons, got let go before Season 2, was in contenders for all of Season 2, made his return in Season 3, redemptive arc, helps take the Shanghai Dragons to a second place finish in Season 3, and then gets released and traded over, or not released, but traded over to Dallas Fuel. He has been on this journey for a long time, and he's now reunited with his old contenders, a lot of his contenders fellow players from Element Mystic. And seeing a lot of these guys come back together has been, for longtime fans of Element Mystic, it has been a dream come true. But what really makes Dallas Fuel special is in all the roles in Overwatch League, whether it's the kind of tank or healer or a specific kind of DPS, hit scan, projectile, etc., the current meta of how the game is being played right now is you need a hit scan player to deal with in this current patch that they're playing on, very empowered Echo, who is a flying, laser shooting, can just do massive amounts of burst damage really quickly. Basically, if you're below half health, you have to watch out for her because she can wipe you out. On the patch they're playing on the current patch available to people who are playing live right now, not the case, but it's because of how the league works. That's how it is right now. Dallas doesn't have a projectile DPS player. Or sorry, a hit scan DPS player. Their hit scan DPS player, Ixie, unfortunately right before the season started, became very ill. He's very, very sick. And he has been essentially not released, but it is very open. They're being very open about he's probably not going to come back for the season. And that was announced right before the season started. So Dallas was in a hard place. And what they've done is that in this meta that demands they have a hit scan, they have said no. They just said no. We're not going to do a hit scan. Or if we do a hit scan, we're going to choose Soldier 76, which for my Overwatch League fans out there, legs in the year of our Lord 2021, like they're running Soldier in this meta, and it's harebrained. It makes no sense. Why would you do that? But they're doing it, and they're making it work, and they made it work to the point where they went undefeated in the Melee finals, from their semifinal match against the Shanghai Dragons to their pre-semifinal match. Their semifinal match against semifinal against Shanghai. Then I'm needing to correct myself again. I apologize. So they started off playing. Their play-in game was against the Chengdu Hunters. They beat them, which Chengdu plays a crazy Echo/Pharah comp that is just baller. Jinmu is their specialist for that, and he is crazy good. Then they beat Shanghai Dragons, and then they went to the finals, and they had to face the Shanghai Dragons again. And it's really cool because Overwatch League has done this thing where in esports...
Hold up real quick. I'm lost. Yeah. I thought when you ran through teams, maybe I just got confused. Yeah. I thought Shanghai Dragons were the third place team, so they were bounced. They didn't make the...
No, they were second place team.
Oh, okay. So who was the one that got bounced?
In
Asian Pacific?
Oh, in Asian Pacific, it was the Seoul Dynasty.
Oh, okay. And I'm going to also go back real quick, and I'm probably going to regret this, but what is a hit scan? What is a hit scan player?
You don't have to regret this. It's a real simple thing. Hit scan is DPS characters who, when you aim and shoot, it's like pinpoint laser precision. So, for example, McCree, Soldier 76, Widowmaker, these characters that when you aim and you shoot, your bullet's just going to go straight and hit there. Immediately. Projectiles are like your Genji, your Pharah, where they launch their weapon, their projectile, but because it has a delay in getting to where you're aiming, you have to lead. So you lead with your rockets with Pharah, you lead with your shuriken as Genji, etc. Okay. So that's the key difference between the two. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
No, that's a really good question though. That's a very like I said, easy answer, straightforward. But yeah, so like Dallas Fuel really has come through, and they've come together as a team. A lot of times, Fearless, who is this player who, like I said, was the main tank on the worst ever team roster for any sports in any place, with the worst scoring record, worst record out of any team in sports, period. Not just esports, sports. And he's come to the point now where he is this top tier, incredible caliber level player, and he has done it by reuniting with his old friends. And so a lot of people are calling him this year's main character for Overwatch League. And it feels good. Like I'm not a big Dallas Fuel fan, but I've always liked them okay. They've always had really cool players and cool personalities with them, but they've also always struggled as an org with just a lot of problems, and just structurally, internally, that it looks like they really did at the end of season 3, really did a very deep look into how their organizational structure was set up, and just completely remodeled it. So massive props to them for winning the May Melee. It's very exciting. Now we're going to be moving into the next set, the next stage, which means they're going to be on the next patch, which is exciting because Diva's mech now does 350 damage when it crashes down. So if you are not careful when Diva's remeching and you're in her face, she will her mech will crush you and kill you. So that'll be fun for anybody who's not a Tracer player. But a lot of major changes like that are happening with the current patch that we're playing on live right now is going to be the patch that they will be playing on in Overwatch League, and so going to see a lot of change-ups. They're reintroducing the hero pool, which means there's going to be every week there's going to be a couple of heroes that aren't allowed to be played, which means we're going to get new meta comps, and it's really exciting. It's very, very exciting. And the best part was this all took place. The North American teams got to go to Hawaii for this and played in Hawaii because that got them closer to Korea, so that they would be in a better time zone and help deal with the time zone difference.
Makes sense.
Yep.
We haven't kind of related to this, and I'm just curious your thoughts because we haven't really talked about it. Obviously, the big Overwatch news that I am familiar with is Jeff Kaplan, of course, leaving Blizzard.
Oh yeah,
Activision Blizzard. A month ago now, probably.
How
do you think that's going to impact? And I guess there's also been a lot of just Blizzard departures, seemingly with a lot of the Activision Blizzard kind of staffing changes and stuff in recent months. Do you think Jeff leaving, because he was obviously the face of Overwatch, do you think him leaving is going to drastically impact either the league or kind of the future of Overwatch with Overwatch 2, or do you think kind of they've got a pretty good staff in place that are probably going to be able to kind of carry things forward even as he moves on?
I kind of have two answers for that are two parts to that answer, I suppose. Let me go ahead and see if I can pull this up very quickly here, because I need to get the guy's name correctly. I just need to make sure. Let's see here. Trivia.
You looking for the guy who's sticking around and taking over?
No. So for us currently, Jeff Kaplan is the face of Overwatch, but in Overwatch's development, he actually was not the head of the project. He was one of the one of the second or third in command guys. The actual person who was in charge of it was actually Chris Metzen. So for people who don't know, Overwatch started out its development as a project called Titan. That's why Blizzard was acquired and merged into Activision in the first place, is because Blizzard was coming up with a new MMO and they were calling it Titan. It crashed and burned during development, and so the system and the actual engine that they are using in Overwatch, and the reason why they're moving into Overwatch 2 and why it's actually a big deal, and why updates take so long in Overwatch currently, is because technically we are playing a first-person shooter and an MMO client, which is a weird thing to say, but that is its origin. But the original leader of Overwatch's development was Chris Metzen. He was the person who developed and created the concept of this quote-unquote superhero versus supervillain type universe that Overwatch takes place in, put everything together. And Soldier 76, actually, interestingly enough, was a comic book character that he wrote for a personal independent comic that he made called Soldier 76, and it was done to test the development team to say, okay, if we're going to make this a shooter hero, what's his kit look like? Here's a character concept, make his kit. And the kit that we get for Soldier 76 is very similar to the one that the team originally came up with. So Chris Metzen really is kind of the father of Overwatch.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff is kind of like the big brother of Overwatch that kind of took over after Chris left.
Yeah.
Because Chris left not too long after the launch of Overwatch.
Yeah, 2016.
Overwatch.
September 2016 is when he announced his retirement, it looks like.
Yeah, so very soon after it launched. And so while we've known Jeff as kind of the dad of Overwatch, he's actually just really been the oldest sibling of the Overwatch League team, or the Overwatch team, who kind of took over Dad's job.
Yeah, but he was also he was leading the Overwatch 2 development team.
Yes, he was. And so that's why. So when I say like, am I like so? Some reasons why I'm not concerned is because the Overwatch team is filled with people who are incredibly talented, have great leadership, and they work really well together. That I don't think a single person leaving, even if it is a like lead of development, is like that is going to be the case, right? So that's one thing. The other thing I will say, and this is where my concerns do come from, is Jeff leaving is a continuation of the Activisionization of Blizzard. I've said this about BioWare before, and I'll now say it about Blizzard. Blizzard isn't Blizzard anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't expect the same stuff that you used to expect from Blizzard and get it, like still get it. Like, we are seeing shortened returns on the emotional investment we make as fans into these franchises, to an extent that it's going to eventually come to a head. Now, I think there's still really a lot of great people working at Blizzard, but we will continue to see this kind of transformation into whatever Blizzard ends up becoming. Overwatch 2, like, my takeaway from this is the result is one of two things. One, development is really done with Overwatch 2. They've been working on it for years now. So it makes sense timeline-wise that, maybe, like, they're at a point now, like, it's very likely they're at a point now where the game is, okay, we've covered development, now it's about, we're on that tail end of development, making sure that the product works when we ship it out.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's about testing, trial and error, making small changes, the heavy workload, because this is what Blizzard does versus what we've seen from other companies. They heavy front load their project so that they have the time to work on these things at the tail end that aren't structurally significant.
Plus, Aaron Keller's taking over, and he was already on the project as the assistant director. So theoretically, he was in a lot of the same meetings that Jeff was in. So
without a doubt, he probably was. And so Jeff leaving, Jeff leaving with the kind of confidence that Jeff had about leaving, makes me lean towards that. As well as do we know? Like, we all love Jeff and we're going to miss him, but we all know Aaron. Aaron's great. And he's got, really have a lot of faith in him because Aaron, if you pay attention, so if you've been involved in this as long as I have, Aaron is often on the Overwatch League, or Overwatch forums rather, talking to people about their questions about the game. Aaron was one of the people who dropped in the forums that, the big Symmetra rework was happening, and gave teases about what that was looking like. So he is definitely been a leader on this project for a very long time, back with Overwatch 1 and now in Overwatch 2. When he moved over there with Jeff to really get into that, to get that working. The other thing I would say is, and this is the dark side of it, is it's possible Jeff said, listen, you want this game coming out within this set date. I don't think it should be coming out at that point. I don't think we're there yet. And they said, well, we'll put it out anyway, and Jeff left because of that. I don't think that Jeff's leaving and departure would look the way that it looked if that was the case, but Bobby Kotick does not give a fuck. So that's where my concern is. Bobby Kotick has made it very clear. Bobby Kotick, of course, being the president of Activision Blizzard, or Blizzard Activision, rather. He is the big CEO of it.
I think you're right. I think it's Activision Blizzard.
Activision Blizzard, yeah.
Yeah.
He has made it very clear, and this is not new. From day one when he took over Activision, he made it 1,000% clear. My priority is to make money for the stockholder. He's never budged on that. He's never changed about that. He has not ever, moved that needle. That he put the needle in that direction, and he has never moved it. And no matter the studio teams he has to cut, no matter what whatever decisions have to be made, he will make it if it means that they turn a profit. And Overwatch 2 has been in development for a while. I have no doubt that they've sunk a lot of money into it. And so finding out that they're going to either need to, and this might have been the thing as well, is that Jeff said we need X amount of more dollars to finish the project. And the cost of that might have been Jeff being leader of the Overwatch project.
I mean, I would argue
like there's a lot of things like that.
The amount of money Overwatch has made on loot boxes, I'm sure, puts it in the top tier of Activision Blizzard's like financial successes. So like it's weird because like obviously we've seen in recent months a lot of departures from Activision Blizzard. Basically, a lot of the murmuring seems to be like, well, they're going to be focusing on their big projects. Don't expect to see little things coming out of Activision Blizzard. I mean, we're like, don't expect to see the Crash Bandicoots, for diehard fans, or the Tony Hawk Pro Skaters, because those teams are getting absorbed into working on Call of Duty and stuff like that. And so it's like, it would seem to me that your Call of Duty and your Overwatch are probably like the two show ponies that like Activision Blizzard will put money behind because they know they'll get returns on those things. And so it's, like I'm not worried about Overwatch. I'm worried about, any other creative endeavors that those teams want to have and want to put out and do.
Those are over.
Like it's weird that we're getting like a Diablo 2 remaster, honestly, because it's like, okay, there's a small and vocal, fan base for that, but they were probably making still plenty of money on Diablo 3. So like, they need to do that, or should they just kind of continue working on Diablo 4, or the Diablo mobile game that clearly went over well, but a ton of stupid people would play and dump a bunch of money into anyway. So yeah, it'll be fascinating to see kind of where the future of Activision Blizzard continues to go, and specifically, I'll be very curious to see if Jeff pops up somewhere else. Or if like he, because I feel like there have been like some Activision Blizzard people that have basically been like leaving and then kind of starting their own studio, if I'm remembering correctly, or something like that, or they'll end up kind of working somewhere where a whole bunch of their other kind of friends are working, where they'll maybe have more of that creative freedom and not be tied to this one project idea that they've been tied to for the last X number of years. So yeah, I'll be very curious to see if and when Jeff pops up again in the future.
Well, it's also entirely possible Jeff's been there for,
I want to say it
20
looked
plus years.
Yeah, 19 years, I think, is what I saw in the
19
IGN
years?
article.
Yeah, 19 years. So like that's also another thing, is like Jeff stayed at that job for 19 years.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people. Like the thing is, Blizzard people have done that. Like Blizzard people do that. They stay at Blizzard forever. But with the like Activision being the dominant partner in that, like in its ecosystem, that is going to change. We saw that with massive layoffs that occurred at Blizzard, like right after BlizzCon, back in 2019, and then
pretty much anytime they have their like annual like fiscal report, it's like, hey, look at how good our numbers are doing, and on the other hand, they're dismissing people to keep those numbers high.
Yeah, like there was, I forgot how many, like hundreds of people got let go from Blizzard, and then Bobby Kotick on the like financial call said record numbers of this and that, and it's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah,
like that's disgusting. That you're like, look how successful we are after we just laid off a bunch of people who have been working for the company for years, and like that does not sit well with people who have the old school Blizzard mentality about a studio and a team, because they do think of them as family. Like that's not changed, I'm sure, for a lot of people who are from older Blizzard, but for people who have come up from other studios and from other places, like Blizzard is if not has already become a normal video game studio.
Yeah,
like I don't think it'll be like some studios where it's like it might as well be seasonal work because of how bad the layoffs are after projects are finished. But I mean, who's to say? It's tough, man. It's tough. I look at it that way, and I think to myself that, this is very much tied into Blizzard and Overwatch and like the Overwatch League. I don't know what to, because I feel very strongly about kind of like these ethical concerns I have, much less not even mentioning the recent I will not be diving into this, but the recent attempted boycott by Chinese teams because a Seoul Dynasty player made comments on a stream about how like you essentially made comments about having to placate China and not mention things like Taiwan or Hong Kong.
Is this recent, or is this tied back to the free Hong Kong stuff recent. From like a year or two ago?
No, this is recent. This is last week.
Oh, okay.
And it came to a head with a joint statement that everybody basically put out, which basically like really was the Chinese teams were telling the the CCP line, which is, you have to like, hey, we will not stand for anybody disregarding Chinese sovereignty. It's the government statement that they're all forced to put out whenever they have to deal with this sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Where they all have to pretend that they're angry and mad, that somebody dare think that China doesn't own everything in the Chinese South Sea, and Taiwan is like all that stuff that they have to do. It's performative for the most part for most people in most places. That being said, I will say that they made a big deal and they were threatened to boycott any scrims or games with Seoul Dynasty. And then what ended up happening is a couple days later, everybody came out with a joint statement that said, out of the concept and principles of unity and togetherness, no boycotts will go forward. Which basically meant that Activision Blizzard said, no, we don't give a fuck. Like, Overwatch League was just like, we don't care. Like, this is posturing, we don't care. Like you don't want to even know what like North American players have said about the stuff.
Yeah,
it's like don't even worry about it. And it's like Sabiolbi, who is the player who is in question about this, played for New York Excelsior for 3 seasons. So he played for an NA team and lived in North America for 3 years before moving back to Seoul and being on the Seoul team now. I'm a Sabiolbi stan. I'll stand him all day long. But this is that kind of stuff happens, and so there's always, I feel like, going to be ethical concerns, considerations that have to be made about things like about Blizzard games and Blizzard operations, just out of the necessity of it. Because when you have somebody like Bobby Kotick and the kind of people who he surrounds himself with in that organization running things, this is the result you get. You get things where basically the result you get is the bottom dollar runs the show, period.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, like you said earlier, the small passion projects, don't ever expect to see those come out of Blizzard ever again.
Yeah,
the age of that is gone.
It'll be interesting to see what the future of that company holds, I guess. But anyway, well, thank you for the Overwatch League update. Even though so much of it goes over my head, I always appreciate chatting with you about the stuff because you clearly are in the know and in the care. So,
Trevor, I literally spent no less than 20 hours this weekend watching Overwatch League games.
I believe it. Yep, that sounds about right.
That's what I do, man. I love it.
I will, so switching over to me, real quick, as I mentioned, nothing really new has been grabbing my attention. I'm still, I'm watching, the new episodes of Mighty Ducks Game Changers, and now that we're in, the season of The Bad Batch, I've been watching some of that on,
how was that been, by the way?
On Disney Plus. It's good. I mean, it's only the first couple episodes so far. First episode very much is a good, hey, it's going to be Clone Wars season 8, basically. Nice. And the second episode is, I mean, it definitely had a lot of callbacks and tie-ins to the Clone Wars. But I share the criticism I've seen a few other people talking about, in that it's retreading a lot of the person that doesn't really want to be a parental figure but is being forced into it relationship that we saw in like The Mandalorian. Like we're seeing that with Hunter and Omega, Hunter of the Bad Batch and Omega, one of the new characters introduced in the series, young girl, female clone, basically. And yeah, episode 2 is basically like that very tropey, like, hey, we're not the kind of people that can take care of a little girl, so we're gonna like find a place and find people that can take care of her, and then, you know, obviously at the end it's like, hey, no, I don't want to go with them, I want to go with you. You guys are my people. And so that's what spoilers for you know, the second episode of the series, loose spoilers or whatever, but like it's pretty much as soon as the idea gets introduced, it's not like, oh, they're gonna just abandon this main character in the second episode of the series. So yeah, it was a little like formulaic, but I'm curious, you know, I'm along for the ride. I'm interested to see where it goes, especially as it's diving into the like post Order 66 era. So it's basically like, hey, maybe this will bridge the gap to Rebels, and we'll kind of follow this group of misfit clones along this journey and see effectively like what happened between the prequel and original trilogy eras that led from clone armies to stormtroopers, if that's the direction they're going with it. So it's cool. Yeah. It's another, you know, Star Wars animation project, so I'm all along for the ride, having a good time with it. And apart from that, I'm just kind of enjoying a lot of like comfort food media, as I kind of described it. I've been in addition to like those shows, and the, like the weekly things I'm keeping up with, I've been rewatching Scrubs, and I'm like in season 6 of a Scrubs rewatch on Amazon Prime. And just having a good fun time with that. That sparked, I think, from when Logan and I a couple months ago on like one of the early access episodes for this show, we talked about like favorite season finales and stuff, and we talked about the not finale of Scrubs, before they got picked up for like the med school year, that a lot of like fans kind of want to dismiss. And so I was like, yeah, I haven't watched Scrubs in a while. Let me like circle back and watch some Scrubs.
It's a really great finale.
Yeah, I mean, like the show as a whole is like just great, and I'm having a great fun time with it. There are definitely a couple things I'm like, oh, that didn't age well, but
yeah, for sure,
as to be expected from a, you know, a show from the like late '90s, early aughts, I think.
I think early aughts through like
yeah, I guess early yeah, or I think just the aughts.
Teens.
But yeah, there's we just in season 6 they've started referencing Grey's Anatomy, and I'm like, wow, and Grey's Anatomy is still going on, so like that show has definitely spanned the eras.
Grey's Anatomy will never end.
Yeah,
I'm convinced. There's like, you can't kill it. You can't kill what's already dead. They just like, Grey's Anatomy is the undead corpse of a medical procedural show that nobody has bothered to put a stake through its heart. Like, it just won't end.
Yeah. So and one of the things I really love, especially coming back to Scrubs, is they nailed music so well in that show.
Yeah.
Like it, and I've always had a deep affinity for it, especially because I think for my birthday one year, my sister and now brother-in-law at the time, just her boyfriend, they basically gave me a gift that was every song used in Scrubs ripped onto like CDs.
Nice.
And I don't know, like, cause it's like, I feel like it was from the days like post Kazaa, but like pre, you know, other streaming. So I don't know like how they got it, how they found it, who like had made that playlist and they just kind of downloaded it. But like, it was just the coolest thing that I had in like college, and would just kind of play so many songs, like especially like people like Joshua Radin, and Winter and stuff like that from a couple of very iconic episodes, of course, in the series. Like I remember like hearing and then listening to those songs on repeat, and like Colin Hay, who makes recurring appearances in there, is just always a ton of fun. And so yeah, they just did a great job. I watched recently the musical episode where
So great.
like, which I remember loving at the time because the patient there is Stephanie D'Abruzzo or D'Ambruzzo, whatever. She was basically Cape Monster on in Avenue Q on Broadway. She was the person who originated that role, and Robert Lopez, who has now gone on to like superstardom for things like Frozen and most recently the WandaVision soundtrack and stuff, or the themes from WandaVision. He worked on the music of that episode, and I remember loving that as a huge fan of Avenue Q at the time. So, like hopping back into that episode and just seeing them clearly have fun, clearly like riff on, Grease and Les Mis and some like iconic musical theater tropes was a ton of fun. And
they have a song that is, they have a song in that episode that's incredibly true to medical science.
Everything comes down to poo.
Everything comes down to poo, which is a very Avenue Q song.
It was the most Avenue Q of the episode. Yeah.
But it's like, it's also a very true medical fact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They get a piece, like a urine sample and a stool sample, and they run all kinds of tests to figure out what's going on in your body.
Yep.
It all comes down to your poop. And man, oh my gosh, that episode is such a banger.
Yeah.
On so many levels.
Guy Love is another great, like it's a great duet song, and since you don't often get duets between two guys, yeah. Ton of fun, especially now that they've gone on and they're doing their own podcast on the show. It's like gosh, yeah. Delightful. But yeah, so
I will say, fun note that I don't think you know about even. So my best friend from high school, Alex Tolman, he's now a doctor, a psychiatrist.
Mm-hmm.
He and I, our high school nicknames for each other was Vanilla Bear and Chocolate Bear.
Okay.
And we both knew Guy Love by heart, and we would lock eyes and just start whispering the lyrics to each other.
Nice.
He's oh gosh, I need to like text him or call him or something. I miss him so much. Mm-hmm. He's married, has 2 kids, he's a doctor now, like super successful, and I'm here sitting recording this awesome podcast with you.
Yeah, there you go. Different levels of success.
Yeah, like the variances in our success are very different. To be fair, I graduated bottom of my class, like very bottom. I was the cutoff student of, if you did worse in school than me, you didn't graduate level of bottom of the class. Like absolute dead last. He was like top 5 student, excelled AP like classes, all honors classes. Like we've ended up where, like, the trajectory of where we've ended up is about where you could expect.
I mean, okay, that was me. I was top of the class in my high school, and I'm doing this podcast with you, so I don't know how to feel about that either myself.
Well, you decided to study theater instead of
very true. Yeah, I was actually. I think when it came down to it, I was like number 4 in my class, and it was because all of the arts electives that I'd taken weren't honors classes, so they were like on a 4-point scale instead of like the AP classes and stuff that were on a 5-point scale. So like they actually brought my GPA down compared to the 3 students above me who, like, we were all straight A students, but I had like a more quote unquote well-rounded experience, and so it knocked me down a peg. But yeah, it was just
and then you went to study theater.
Yeah.
Alex studied medicine.
I studied computer engineering first, which weirdly I did that for a year, and that has more or less become what my career has been. Apart from like I'm not doing programming so much, but yeah, it's I did that for a year, and then I switched to theater and business management, and then I realized I didn't actually want to run a theater company, so. And here we are podcasting.
There you go.
But yeah, Scrubs, it's been a ton of fun to rewatch. I'm having a great time with that. And just like, I love, like, we just, spoilers for Scrubs, the episodes that I just watched were it was like a 2-parter basically where Laverne dies. And I know, like, that at some point down the line I have Shirley to look forward to coming, like that actress coming back and playing her twin sister Shirley. But yeah, it like, especially because it does that thing where like the first part of the episode is very much like very featured on her, or the first episode is very highly featured on her, and then it ends with that like gut punch of like she was in a car accident, she's in a coma, and I was like, oh yeah, I had completely like I knew that was coming somewhere along the line. I didn't think it was coming this soon in the in watching it, and then the second episode is all about like everybody saying goodbye to that character. It's a very Mrs. Landingham kind of episode from West Wing, but
it is. I would also say that it's very like it happens not too long after the Ben episode.
No, Ben was a few seasons ago.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, Ben I think was like season 4. I think
I went through a very tragic part of like a very tragic like couple of weeks of my life that I don't talk about like ever.
Mm-hmm.
And Scrubs is the show that got me like moving through that part of my life.
Yeah.
So I binged I basically binged from season 3 onward for the rest of the show.
Yeah.
So.
Ben's iconic episode was season 3. I think he gets introduced in like season 1 or season 2, and then it kind of makes his like return appearance. And it's I think we talked about, I don't remember if it was I talked about with you or I talked about with Logan, but like Brendan Fraser, in like he was, I mean, he probably wasn't doing a ton of movies and stuff, but like it's certainly one of his iconic roles. Like it's that and The Mummy that I think about when I think of Brendan Fraser. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like that episode in particular. I mean, like really rewatching it like I already loved him, but it's giving me such a great reappreciation of John C. McGinley, who is just phenomenal in this show. Like Zach Braff as JD is fun and quirky, but a lot of times it's just like, okay, like you're doing stuff and your character is supposed to be annoying and I'm annoyed by you. But like John C. McGinley is just like, he knocks everything out of the park that is thrown his way, and does not miss. And so it's a ton of fun seeing him and like appreciating that I can still appreciate Dr. Cox as a character.
Which is something I think we've all worried about as we look back on Dr. Cox's character.
Mm-hmm.
Of like, is he safe still?
I mean, like he definitely has a couple moments that like border like, hey, this wouldn't fly in 2021, but really it's more like JD and stuff. Like there's an undercurrent of like homophobia in some of the early stuff, and like the show calls it out every now and then, but I mean
that was also the humor of the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Which sucks. It's bad that was the humor of the time, but that was the humor of the time. Mm-hmm. And so if you have two guys who are vulnerable with each other, then the obvious jokes to make back then were they're gay.
Mm-hmm.
And so like that's where the jokes ended up landing, because that's what you'd expect in the 2000s for two men who are vulnerable with each other. Now, I feel like, especially in later seasons, they destroyed that they took toxic masculinity apart piece by piece over the seasons.
I mean, they do that. I think the most with the Todd, and the thing with Todd,
the Todd is
the Todd is like the problem character, but he is also never portrayed as like a good dude. Like from day one, everybody's like, that's not cool, man, but that's just who he is, and then they kind of start peppering in there the like maybe he's overcompensating or something like that. Yeah, he's like,
they deconstruct it, and then it just just the way that works and how it deconstructs. I mean, it's obvious that he's not a good person, because as a doctor, when the Rate My Doctor stuff comes out, they have him start telling people that he is JD, so JD's ranking gets tanked.
Yeah, I've not gotten to that point yet, but
it's such a good episode.
Yeah, I'd forgotten.
No, the Todd is very clearly not a good but at the same time, he is a genuine, sincere person, but he is difficult to pull out of that like caveman mindset.
Yeah, and they like to reinforce that, like, yeah, he's a misogynistic turd, but he's also a really good surgeon, and like. Mm-hmm. Because he's a misogynistic turd, like that often gets forgotten about, and like Turk's, often like God, I keep forgetting that he's better at this than me because nobody likes him. But yeah.
Well, he's just like, he just sees people as, he sees every single human being as an object.
Yeah.
Not like it's not so much that he's misogynistic.
It's
the way that he
it's
sees
mostly
people.
misogynistic. As the series goes on, he starts to kind of say like, "Hey, I appreciate, a good-looking body, man or woman, but like it's still mostly women."
Oh, 100%. Yeah. That doesn't really, yeah, I don't know. It does, like, towards the final seasons, that does change in a way that, like, it's his character turn with, how do you write a terrible, horrible person into a progressive lane, and they do it, and it works.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's the brilliance of Scrubs, is that they can just make that work.
Yeah, I really enjoyed, and it's a trope or a technique that they use throughout the series that I've always enjoyed back in my original watching of it, and still today, is every episode is basically my something something something, and it's JD kind of telling the story from his perspective. But every now and then, usually like once or twice a season, he'll basically hand off narrating duties to somebody else, and we'll get his story or a her story or his story too or whatever, and we'll basically get a new point of view character that helps flesh out that character. And I think one of the most recent ones I watched was basically the Bob Kelso episode, where we kind of get to see how, yes, he's always, curmudgeonly and grumpy and the, bitter old man kind of thing who, is loves his gay son. I forget the kid's name.
Oh shoot!
Yeah,
it's on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah, and is constantly making fun of Eunice, was it his wife? But like he clearly like he
loves
he
his
does
wife,
care.
Like,
it's like he does like for like one episode early on when he calls her Bunny or whatever, but then like every other episode is like he's constantly making fun of her, and then he'll be like, "Oh, that's right, you don't know she's in a wheelchair."
Gosh, you're right. Oh my gosh, I forgot. It just reinforces how bad of a person he is.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not Baxter is not the son. Baxter was his dog.
Baxter was his dog. Yeah.
Harris, I think.
Harris. Oh, how's Harris doing? He's like.
He's got a new boyfriend that is helping finance his like off-Broadway musical, but it turns out they were using it as a cover for drug smuggling or something like. And it's like every little layer we get into like Harris's backstory. I don't think we ever get Harris as like a fully fleshed out like
he's never in the show.
But it's definitely one of those like it would have been very funny to eventually have seen that character. But yeah, he's like the Maris character from Frasier.
Very much so.
But yeah, Scrubs, ton of fun. I'm really enjoying just kind of like it's a show. It's in my top 10 shows of all time kinds of things, and I just hadn't watched it in a number of years, so it's been fun just kind of hopping back in and watching that. A couple other comfort things that we won't spend as much time on, but I was telling Cameron before we started recording, I basically have been replaying Final Fantasy X. I think in particular because that War of the Visions game that you hooked me on a year plus ago did a Final Fantasy X tie-in event recently.
Yep, they did.
And so when I would log in, I'd hear like the Return to Xanarkand music, and I'd be like, I have that game. Let me boot it up and see, like, revisit it a little bit. And so yeah, I basically have gotten to the end of that game, and am debating on whether or not I want to do like side quests and cleanups, and whether or not I probably will not. But like I've looked up guides of like if I wanted to go for the platinum trophy in this game, what would that look like? What would that entail? And at this point, I don't think I will, because just other things are going to start coming out that are going to catch my interest more. But it was a fun game to go back and revisit. And in particular, I finally got the Lightning Dancer trophy for dodging 200 lightning bolts in a row, which is one of the worst trophies ever created. It's that and jump rope 1,000 times for Final Fantasy IX that I'm just like, fuck you, Square Enix. Just fuck you.
Why? Why would you do
like,
that?
Those are terrible trophies. Why would you make those?
No, I'm curious. So that you're playing the HD collection, right?
Yeah.
So will you be going on to 10-2 then That's the question.
I
Probably not.
like that was kind of the original thought was actually I was like, I really like because I really like 10-2.
10-2, here's the thing. 10-2 is exactly what it is, which is it is an adventurous romp with three gals doing a Charlie's Angels shtick, and they end up saving the world while at the same it's a great small side story that gets a lot of flack because it was the first real sequel
Yeah.
to first real continuation of a Final Fantasy story. And so I think it gets a lot of flack, but when you look at the gameplay of that game, the dress sphere system is brilliant.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think it also suffered because, especially when it came out, the gaming culture was even more terrible and misogynistic and stuff. And so, the idea of, wait, I'm playing as three girls? There's no guy character for me to play as? The fans
that was a real problem.
of those kinds of games were like, boo, I don't want to do this. No. But
Although
I was really enjoying it.
It still sold pretty well. That was kind of the crazy thing I was watching. So it's funny you mentioned you've been playing FF10 because I've been in an FF10 kick.
Mm-hmm.
But particularly FF10-2 is something that I've been interested in because I think it is a wild experiment that they committed to, where, for example, it's very much and this is going to sound crazy, and I'm going to sound insane when I say this, but wait for me to explain. It is very much the Majora's Mask of the Final Fantasy game series.
Yeah,
I say that because Final Fantasy X-2 was made within a year of Final Fantasy X. They the reuse of assets and what they did for that is brilliant. Some things I think they fall flat on is Blitzball is just a Blitzball management game at that point. You're not really playing Blitzball. It's not fun. And also the 100%ing that game to get the true ending is notoriously impossible without a guide.
Yeah, that was one I remember.
And even
attempting
with a guide,
to do that,
it's still the most I ever got was 92%. Because there's just some things that if you make the wrong move or you just go a little too far, you get locked into a cutscene series that doesn't end until you're done with that chapter. There's no way of going from we're at endgame, now let me go ahead and do the regular Final Fantasy thing of going back and doing a bunch of side quests. That's not allowed.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, I think that it has, without a doubt, one of the best bangers that could slap, which is 1,000 words.
Mm-hmm.
Is that your Final Fantasy? Yeah, that's the Final Fantasy 10.
It's the 10 and 10-2 HD guide, which I got back when I bought it on PS3, and then I bought it again on Vita, and then I bought it again on PS4 because I'm a fucking idiot like that. And Square Enix didn't do those games as cross-buy games, just cross-save. And so I have at least 4 different versions of Final Fantasy X and 10-2 because I'm an idiot like that. But yeah, I always really enjoyed Final Fantasy X-2. I have not re-hopped into it in this because I ended up kind of just going a little bit more into Final Fantasy X than I was anticipating. And like I said, at this point, we're about to get some other games that I'm probably more interested in hopping back into, but maybe by end of year I'll circle back around and boot up 10-2. Because I always enjoyed it, and I especially enjoyed the dress sphere system. The job basically was a nice return to a job system in those games. And Thousand Words is great. Is Thousand Words? Thousand Words is the song later in the game, right? It's
the concert song.
I mean, I remember the opening song. I remember watching that on IGN on repeat, when they uploaded that video and stuff, and just being oh my god, this is really cool. Getting to see it, we're getting a proper Final Fantasy sequel. First one we've ever done. I wish it was, for Final Fantasy VI or Final Fantasy IV or something. And I ended up regretting what I wished for there with Final Fantasy IV. But the fact that we got a Final Fantasy sequel, and it was very fascinating, especially because I always look at Final Fantasy X as you could really tie it back to even 7. But like Final Fantasy X, when they added in like voice acting and stuff, is where Square Enix for me really turned into, they're putting so much effort and resources into making this the best looking game possible, that's where you started seeing the development cycles just completely blow up. And so, yeah, the fact that they basically were able to reuse those assets, and we got a Final Fantasy X-2 pretty quickly, that they would then do again with Final Fantasy 13 trilogy. Like, I almost wish they would do that more, because I think it'd be, and you know, hopefully we'll see something like that with a pretty quick turnaround between 7 Remake and 7 whatever the next. I mean, we're getting, you know, Intergrade here in a month, which is going to be some new stuff to bridge the gap between 7 games. But yeah, like I remember like that just being like, oh, this is a really cool thing. As a lifelong Final Fantasy fan, we're getting we're getting a like continuation of that story. How's that going to look without, I always say Titus, but as Kingdom Hearts introduced, it's Titus, and I hate them for that.
See, if you had read the EGM article where they had the big focus on Final Fantasy X, the big reveal cover story of it, you would know, because they made sure to put the correct pronunciation when they introduced Titus's character.
Yeah,
in that
I was
article.
never an EGM guy myself, and
See,
so
that's
I
where
instead was going
y'all
off
fall
of the character Titus Andronicus from Shakespeare.
Oh, there you go. Whenever I heard people say Titus, I immediately thought of the comedian Titus, because he had a show on at the time.
Yeah, but he was TIT, and Titus Andronicus is TID US. But yeah, so anyway.
And the reason why it's Titus is because it's a play off of the Okinawan word for sun.
That makes sense.
And
because Yuna obviously would be moon.
It's the Okinawan word for moon.
Yeah.
And because the Okinawan culture is a massive inspiration for Tetsuya Nomura and a lot of the other design people on how they built Spira to be completely different than any other world.
Yeah.
That's where I think Spira is very special. Final Fantasy X and X-2 are very special in that you are dealing with a kind of quote-unquote post-apocalyptic world that is at the same time vibrant and
colorful.
Incredibly colorful. And the ruins are devastating. Like when you see the ruined cities, whether it's Zanarkand or other like the underwater cities and stuff, you get the feeling that these were places people lived in.
Mm-hmm.
And they did this with PS2 era graphics and cutscenes and whatnot. But one thing I will say about Final Fantasy X-2, and that's kind of my final note on it, is the level of voice acting improvement from like mouth movement to like the actual capture
the syncing.
Of the syncing of it, and the way that they were like, because like this was a massive thing. I remember the interview that they had for the voice actors for Final Fantasy X. They said this is, and the translation team was, we have to find a way to translate it, but we have to make sure that it can fit within the same, like as close to the same syllable count as it is in Japanese.
Yeah.
And it really did a big thing to help like change and revolutionize the idea, because for the first time, translators couldn't just be like, well, I can't fit it in it, so let's just change it to whatever we need it to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, they were doing off of like only text boxes and stuff. Yeah. So, yeah.
And it was like, for me, and that's why we get some really awkward, bad voice syncing and voice acting. Ha 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 ha. And but I will say, for Final Fantasy X-2, you get to Final Fantasy X-2, and all of a sudden, it's infinitely better. And not only that, but when they translated 1,000 words into English, for it to match and sync so perfectly with, and I only realized it this past weekend when I've rewatched the music video, both English and Japanese, of 1,000 words, like probably 30 times.
Mm-hmm.
I've just been in this kick where like I'm just so into that song and so into that the motifs of that song and the kind of like story that it tells between Lien and Shuyin, that I was really struck and amazed. I'm like, because I was like, I've never actually seen the Japanese one, and I'm like, pull it up side by side. Like, this is really interesting in that it's perfect. Like it's virtually perfect. That they were able to translate this song and convey it so well and do it so perfectly. And so doing that within a year also really, like, looking back on it really astounds me. So I'm glad you've been replaying it, man. I think that those are, I think Final Fantasy X is still like one of the best stories in Final Fantasy. And I think Spirit is maybe the best world that they ever developed.
Yeah, it's so my like Final Fantasy rankings has pretty much consistently been like 6 and 4 are like my top, and then 9 and 7 of the PS1 era, and then just below, or like below 7 is 10, and then we get into like the middling to forgettable Final Fantasies, and then we get down to the bottom and the ones that I hate, like 13 and 8, and like the second half of 15, basically. And so 10 has always been like, while it hasn't been my favorite, it's been, you know, at the top tier of Final Fantasy games. And so
everything, I would say everything pre-Leviathan in 15 I adore and love. Mm-hmm. Everything after the Leviathan incident in 15 I don't care for.
Yeah, that's pretty much
that's
the cutoff for me too, I think. And I've never, like, it's one of those, like, I've flirted with the idea of like going back and doing like a like, let me just do a full playthrough of all the Final Fantasies and stuff. Because I did that. I basically went through and replayed all of them apart from the MMO ones around when 12 came out. Like, I went back because I think at that point, like, I hadn't played 5 and 3, I think, had just come out or something like that stateside.
Yes, yeah.
So like, those were a couple games that I just never had played because they hadn't really, like, I could have played the PlayStation 1 port of Final Fantasy V, and I started it, but I never got through it because I was such a fan of 6 that I would just always be like, screw that, I'm just going to go to 6 instead. But like, I remember doing that and kind of doing a full, like, let me play through all of the series. And then I've continued on, like, as each new one has come out, I've played it, sometimes begrudgingly. But yeah, it's one of those that, like, I would be interested to go back, especially to 15, because it got patched so much after I played it that it seems like it's a brand new game in the Royal Edition version of it. But anyway,
well, for me, the story is always going to be where it faults. And even after, like, watching the playthroughs and story explanations of each
of the chapters,
each of the chapter editions that they put in there, for me, it does not do enough.
Yeah.
To, because one of them is almost pointless, which is the Gladius one. Mm-hmm. It's like, this is how Gladius got those extra scars. Nobody gave a fuck.
Yeah. That was not one of the questions I had coming out of that game.
You answer the question about Ignis, which is, I'm like, Ignis seems to be, like, you hint at this, and then you basically like, yeah, this is the thing about Ignis. It's like, that was brushed over very quickly. I appreciate having an additional episode to explore Ignis's origins. And then you get into, you know, the other ones. But then the last one, episode Arden, is the one where I was just like, you're like, we're going to reveal the twist on the story. Mm-hmm. And, like, this is the real, like, I'm like, no. Yeah. Nope, I didn't need that. That was dumb. I don't like Arden. I liked Arden as a villain because he was an asshole whose intention was to try to, like, screw everyone else over because bad things happen. Like, he got screwed over, so he's going to screw everyone else over. I like that motivation. I like his character as being this, like, irredeemable asshole. I like that, having that as an enemy who playfully, like, goes here and there and just does nothing but annoy you in a very, like, a soft old man version of almost like Kefka or other characters where it's like playing into that, like, I didn't need this immensely miscommunicated tragic backstory.
Not every villain needs to be redeemable. Like, some of them can just be messed up assholes that are just there to watch the world burn.
He is a in his story that they originally told, he is a tragic villain. And you feel for that. I
don't remember that because he was such a forgettable villain.
No, No, for him, my whole thing
or
was
like some of it was like, oh, it's explained if you watch Kingslave or stuff like that. And it's just like whatever, what the fuck ever.
For his stuff was
it was like a lot of it I felt like was left on the cutting room floor, and so that's where there might be more to it now. That I mean, it sounds like
think there's
given
that
they gave him a
now.
whole separate chapter.
There's way more now. His whole thing was he was originally chosen of the crystal, like and part of the royal family and the heir, but he decided to kind of do what the priestess, prophetess, goddess, whatever does, which is absorb the evil from things. And because of that, he was impure, and so he got kicked out or whatever. It was bullshit. It doesn't matter. I don't care. He doesn't need, like, we didn't need that from him. You could have just given us, I don't know. There's a lot about the last half of Final Fantasy 15 that just pisses me off still.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So yeah, that's like Final Fantasy, like the ones I like, comfort food, and so I was just enjoying that. And then lastly, I've just been rewatching or rereading Invincible. About halfway through like the first compendium there, and I'm just like continually in awe of how well they adapted things for the TV show, especially in like as I'm going deeper and deeper and seeing like, oh wow, they really moved things up in the order, and which completely kind of like mess with like timelines of things, and it'll be curious to see how things kind of continue playing out in the series. But like it's just an incredible fun story, and so I'm enjoying kind of revisiting and rereading that. So, but anyway, let's throw it back over to you. Like I remember an hour ago when I was like, "It's going to be a pretty quick one," and we've clearly had plenty to talk about. So throwing it back over to you, you finished Borderlands 3 finally, our infamously our 2019 Game of the Year for that nerdy site. So what'd you think? When all is said and done now. What a I mean, to be fair, 2019 wasn't a banger year of a ton of like other games.
What a fart! I finished it just because like I wanted. I'll be honest, I did it because I wanted to play with the adaptive trigger features that they have in the PS5 version.
Yeah,
that's the only reason I kept playing through it, is because I liked that. I really got into like the loving and enjoying the way that the different guns played with the adaptive triggers. I just thought was really, really cool and had a lot of fun with that. The story continues to be my biggest problem, which is I do the stuff and then it's like, cool, here's a cutscene. It's like, all right, cool. Why am I not there?
Yeah.
Why are these things happening? Like, these things happen right in front of you, Vault Hunter. Can you believe that it's happening? It's like, well, it's not happening right in front of me, because if it had, I would have put a bullet in somebody's head, obviously. I'm standing right there. Why is this like the first one they ever do that with? It's like, no, you're not there, so that's fine. The rest of them, you're in the room, and you're just watching it happen with like munching popcorn.
Not even like you're just not even in the scene. For whatever reason, they did not bother animating your character into those scenes, and it blows my mind. And like, I guess maybe because if you were playing it with like 4 other people or whatever, or 3 other people, it would have been harder to animate all. But it's like no, you build that into those cutscenes. You build in, spaces for 4 of those characters to be like, clearly you don't need to be speaking because you're going to be a mute character or whatever in those moments. But yeah, the fact that you're just not even there, and they'll like pan out and show you and highlight that you're not standing there. It's just like, what the fucking hell? Like, what a terrible design choice that was. And
especially after Borderlands 2, where you are in those pivotal moments, like when Roland's killed, when Angel is like having you like disconnect her from her system, when that happens. First off, it's happening in first person. Like you're watching it happen in front of you, and like it's very clear, like you're trying to do something, or like it just happens so fast out of nowhere. Like that is a very real way of handling it. And after encountering kind of like really smart storytelling decisions in Borderlands 2 to insanely bad ones in Borderlands 3, like just especially towards the end, where it says like, okay, so the whole thing is it's all about the sirens, and it's that eldritch abomination that you fought in the first game, but it's just kind of like a big ol' thing now, but it's not even that big, and it was way bigger in the first game, and that was just like the tentacles popping out of the ground. That sucks. That's like, this is lame. This is so
Yeah.
lame. What a just total, like, it shows to me that, like, Borderlands as a series, like, did not, like, they said, hey, we're gonna come out and do the exact same thing but bigger, and it's like, cool, we've moved on.
Yeah,
as,
I
like,
mean,
as
that's
people.
like to their, not to their credit, but like I get the rationale behind that because of just how well Borderlands 2 did, that just lean into the same thing but more of it. But yeah, it's I especially after like Tales from the Borderlands gave us like a hint of
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, you could tell an interesting story with these characters and in these worlds. The fact that we don't get that in Borderlands 3, and it just feels like a step backwards for the series.
Also, the fact that they brought and made Vaughn such a key character always weirds me out because it's Chris Hardwick.
Yeah,
Yeah, and he's a creep, so,
yeah.
like,
I
that's
remember
just always weird.
I remember when all that came out and they were like, he's coming back, and people being like, hey, I'm gonna not play this game because fuck that guy. I remember thinking, and I wonder if anybody ever did it, the idea that, well, if you like, I'm sure you could have modders out there that could just make it so anytime he talks, you're just hearing a fart. You're just hearing a fart noise. Like, I'm sure they could replace his audio lines with that. If they can get fucking Thomas the Tank Engine to replace Lady Demetrice or whatever in Resident Evil Village, I'm sure they could replace Chris Hardwick's VO lines with fart noises. But yeah, I imagine nobody else had that like stupidly juvenile creative thought to
Just
say
get rid of it,
fuck
yeah.
that guy.
I just, like, he doesn't show up for such a long time. But he's so present in the beginning and end of that game,
Yeah,
and he's like, he's doing the things, and it's like he's doing the things. It sucks because he's doing the things that I loved that he did in Tales from the Borderlands because we didn't know he was a creep, and he's doing it now, and it's like you're doing the same thing over and over again. That you know that I love, but you know that I can't love them anymore,
yeah. I remember
and so you're just taunting.
when you're basically tasked with like saving him or whatever. I just kept like shooting him
Yep.
in those like opening things. And obviously, it doesn't do anything and whatever. He's like an invincible character, or whatever. But I, like for my own satisfaction, I remember just like pointing the gun at him and just unloading round after round. Yeah. Well, since we covered plenty of other things, I guess we don't need to spend too much time on Borderlands 3. So
Just
let's
I finished it, and I will say I think this game has some of the best characters that you can play.
Okay.
Like, the actual individual personalities of each of the characters is super cool.
Yeah, I like that they've continued developing that. Like, that was something I feel like that got really ramped up with the pre-sequel, which, like, obviously it wasn't like a proper, Gearbox one or whatever. So it's like it's often looked at as like the Arkham Origins of probably the series. But one of the things I really loved about it was your character interacted dynamically with the lines, like, and they would have
Yeah.
lines that like fit their character. And I love that they continued that on in this one. That, like, yeah, you have Zane kind of commenting on the action in a way different from Amara and some of the other characters. So yeah,
Yep.
so
It's
it
just,
was a nice thing to
yeah.
to carry over. Cool.
But it's just I'd say Borderlands 3 is at this point now for me forgettable.
Yeah, I mean, I booted up the PS5 version to see like what that was like, and honestly, like, mostly to see like if it would just sync over my trophies from the PS4 one, and I would get like a new free platinum. It did not. It synced over like 3 or 4 trophies or something like that, and I was like, well, I'm not gonna like fucking replay this game to 100% every like map again or something. Like, I was just like, nope, I'm not gonna bother with any of that. So nope. Like, I basically uninstalled it almost immediately again.
Yeah.
They still have like, I'm still tempted to at some point maybe go back in and do. I think they had 2 more DLCs that came out since the ones I've played. There's like the Wild West one, and I think whatever the last one was. I have no interest in doing like the director's cut or whatever. Basically, they came
No.
out with like a second season pass to get like director's cut, and I'm like, fuck no. I bought the goddamn collector's complete edition. Just give me all that shit for free. Whatever. Fuck
Yeah.
you guys. Try to
No,
just
I had that
milk
problem.
as much money out of it as you can.
Not only that, but like also the one, like, I ended up buying one of the DLCs because it had a it came with the new like a fourth loadout ability.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, that sounds cool, and I did it, and it's just like a fake battle royale, and it's not great. Like, it's just after Borderlands 1 and 2's really like banger DLCs.
Yeah.
Getting such lackluster DLC for, and this thing, I know that there's like a couple of them. That one is like the marriage of
Hammerlock and Jacobs it was a cute one to see kind of their story kind of culminate.
I love them as a couple. Like, they're just such a fun little couple.
Yeah. I like it never, like, clearly nothing ever even came close to reaching the highs of the Tiny Tina DLC. But yeah, like even from Borderlands 2, like I hated the Hammerlock DLC in that one, just because it's like the enemies there are just like fucking absurdly difficult for that game.
Also, it plays super weirdly into colonialism of the African nation that just did not feel comfortable.
Yeah, very. I mean, yeah. But like I liked the Torg, Caravan of Carnage or whatever it was.
Oh, Caravan of Carnage is one of, like, here's the thing. I love Tina's DLC, but Torg's Carnival of Carnage was such a great DLC for us to finally get Torg himself in there.
Like, Torg is just such a great character that, like, I love every moment with him. Like, the fact that he's basically like just Randy Savage on steroids and with constantly being bleeped, is a ton of fun. Which is even more fun, like when he comes back in the Tiny Tina stuff and then is like no, I like this nerd stuff too. Like, you're just being prejudiced. Like, I wish there were more of Torg in Borderlands 3. Honestly, it was disappointing when he was not there, but. Or like when he's there, in limited capacity and stuff. But anyway, moving on. The last thing we will talk about is Mass Effect, because we're both excited about the Legacy Edition coming out this week.
Very excited.
So what's your history with Mass Effect, Cam?
So my history with Mass Effect is... so I played some BioWare games, Knights of the Old Republic, and Dragon Age Origins. I played those on PC. And so when I ended up getting a Xbox 360 for the first time, my cousin handed me Mass Effect 1 and said, play this game. And so I did, and I just had such a great time with it. This is probably 2009, 2010 that I'm playing this. And it's I'm having an insane amount of fun with it. Really, really digging it and loving it. And then finished it and then popped over to Mass Effect 2, because that had come out not too long before then. And just played the hell out of that and just had such an amazing time with it. And continuing the story of like my Shepard from 1 to 2, getting that awesome moment of where like visuals had improved on the character model so much from 1 to 2, because the Frankenstein abomination that was my Shepard from 1.
So I've been replaying on my Xbox through backwards compatibility and stuff, and I'm in Mass Effect 3 basically right now, and I look at my Shepard, I'm like, I really should have just gone with one of the defaults from 1, because I've carried over like my Shepard, and he's just like, his eyebrows are just like basically blonde eyebrows. It's like, he looks terrible. He is a terrible looking Shepard character, and I hate so much of how he looks. I'm just like, I definitely messed this up in game 1 and should have just like let them, when Cerberus uses the Lazarus Project or whatever in Mass Effect 2, I should have just let them go with just go with an old a default model, but I did not. And so I just look at him just like, you just look like such a goof. Let me just go ahead and keep the helmet on at all times.
Yeah. No, I loved it because I didn't even realize how unique of a character I made in Mass Effect 1 that when I refined it in Mass Effect 2 and then played him through in Mass Effect 3, he looked so great in Mass Effect 3. I was like, wow, this is so cool the way that like it's carried over. So I was super pumped for Mass Effect 3. I ended up replaying and like doing like a very special custom save from 1 to 2 and then getting ready for 3.
Mm-hmm.
And I beat 3, and my feelings, like, for the first time in my life, I did not know if I liked something or I didn't like something. And I realized that the ending gave me this massive hole of confusion and frustration and a lot of other things. So this is before the director's cut, when they fixed it. And so I'm like, I just have so many questions, so many, like, series of events didn't make sense. Like, they told us that we would have this, like, really definitive ending that would, like, it's going to be different enough. So, like, there's a lot of things that'll be different. And it was so frustrating to just be like, but that was, like, I'm frustrated because, like, the ending doesn't make sense with the rest of the game and the rest of the series. It's so awkward and bare-boned, and, like, there's just so many things that are just not, like, don't make sense about it. Like, where did this space kid come from? And, like, anyway, there's, like, all these questions that eventually don't matter anymore today. They don't matter today because the director's cut answered those questions. The other DLC, like, fed into it. And so now, like, I'm very excited to go through and play the definitive edition because I'm looking forward to that. But being told, hey, if you want, like, the best possible ending, you're going to need to play the multiplayer. You're going to need to, like, do all these things to get your galactic readiness score up to be able to handle this and, like, do this. And thinking back to having just re-beaten Mass Effect 2,
mm-hmm.
knowing the kind of, like, choices and reasoning that you have to make so that everybody gets out alive, like, in order for things to happen and to make sense and for everybody to get out alive, you had to have made, like, specific preparations. And you were rewarded for that. And so expecting that with Mass Effect 3's ending and having it not matter in that aspect of it was confusing and frustrating. And I will say this, I was on the Mass Effect Reddit when Retake Mass Effect happened, and I never, ever, ever expected them to do the director's cut. I just assumed, like, this is just kind of going to be the ending that we get, and we have to live with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, as far as people complaining and wanting developers to fix things and being entitled people about it, Retake Mass Effect's answer to that was to do things like sending cupcakes to BioWare. And, like, do it, like...
I do not remember that at all. I remember angry, like, assholes on the internet. I don't remember the...
Oh, yeah.
Like...
There were those.
I remember seeing stuff like that with, like, No Man's Sky recently, of, like, hey, let's buy the billboard outside of the No Man's Sky office to, let them know how much we appreciate them. Like, I remember seeing that. I do not remember similar... I remember everybody hating BioWare. And
oh, yeah,
it was weird because
so
I was like, I had no problems with the original ending. I was like, it was like, it was fun. I got the synthesis ending or whatever the first time around. I had a good time with it because I always looked at the whole game as the ending of that story. So getting to solve the genophage stuff and getting to kind of find a resolution between the Quarians and the Geth, like, those were the big picture moments that were fleshing out and filling out my ending and my story. That when we got to kind of the red, blue, green ending or whatever, I was just like, well, that's just, like, more an epilogue to me than anything else. So, like, I was never, like, in the, like, fuck this game's ending or whatever. Like, I enjoyed it fine. I thought the director's cut and then especially the Citadel DLC just made it that much better. In fact, I think the Citadel DLC is, like, my favorite DLC of all time, with Tiny Tina's DLC from Borderlands 2 being, like, number 2 for me. And yeah, like, I love just that aspect. I love the story of that just being, like, the real send off to all those characters, like bringing all of your party members from every game together, and going, like, you're all going on a mission where everybody's just kind of, like, talking over one another and bouncing off each other was a ton of fun. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it as well. I like and I go into this whenever it comes out. I will be on the Massively Affected podcast that was announced a week or two back by our friend Josh Silverman at Bear Punch on Twitter, and I talk with him. My Mass Effect history is unique in that I came in on Mass Effect 2 since I didn't have an Xbox 360. I did not get to play Mass Effect until it came to PlayStation. And when Mass Effect 2 came out, I played through that. I played through it, I think, like before my PS3 was even connected to the internet or anything. So like I was not, I like, because it came with like the interactive comic that you can like do and then like make your big decisions from the first game that it would carry over. I did not get any of that. So I got whatever like the default Mass Effect 1 story beats were, which included like Rex died and I think
Boo.
Caden. I think you actually got to like pick, did Caden or Ashley die, and I think initially I basically killed Caden. But then I went.
You saved the space racist.
Well, I didn't know she was a space racist like at the time. But then I love the game so much that I like actually went and bought it on PC and and played through the first game on PC. And I think I bought Mass Effect 2 on PC again to just see, what like how the things I did in Mass Effect 1, how they carried over into Mass Effect 2. And then eventually when Mass Effect 3 came out, they brought Mass Effect 1, and I basically like replayed the whole series on PS3 at the time. And so yeah, I've been basically doing that again on Xbox this year, and just having a ton of fun with it. And even then, like even when I did kind of play it the first time there, I thought I could change space racist Ashley, and she does. She improves over the course of the series. But yeah, it was also like, well, I can bang her or I can bang the blue alien lady, and I'm gonna go with space racist, I guess, because yeah, whatever.
Trevor, I did not expect that answer from you.
Whatever. Like, I preferred her look to the Liara model. I whatever. But I like originally. Again, part of this is I got into Mass Effect 2 in large part because as a huge fan of Chuck, I was a huge fan of Yvonne Strahovski, and so her coming in as Miranda Lawson, I was like, "Yep, that's absolutely who I'm going to romance in that game." So yeah,
I've shared something with you, Trevor. If you want to just take a quick look at it,
I don't want to.
This is a great summary of how a large number of the fans from Mass Effect reacted to the ending and what their protest was like.
Okay, it's too small on my screen, so I'm not going to be able to read it really.
My bad.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'll pull it up on my mobile or something later and get a better look at it.
It's a good chuckle, for me at least, because I remember people were like, "What can we do?" People on the internet being like, "What can we do to get BioWare to change the ending?" And they're like, "Let's donate to charity, or let's send them cupcakes." And it's like, and it's just like the escalation of that. It is just like, you guys, they're not going to change it.
Yeah, I would still guess there were way fewer of those people than there were of people just being angry and assholes on the internet, because it's the fucking internet.
Well, if you were on, here's I think the difference. If you were on Twitter, probably. Yeah. If you were not on Twitter, if you were
or like
Twitter,
in the IGN
places.
comment section is where I was.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. You're talking about the most two toxic places on the internet.
Exactly.
Of course they were toxic.
Okay, like Reddit's not
assholes.
all that great, so like settle down there.
The Mass Effect Reddit subreddit was wholesome and good.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly because they would ban comments and like close threads and ban threads that were
More toxic.
just it didn't have anything constructive to say. It was just like fuck BioWare, fuck them,
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff. Like, so you didn't get any of the basic stuff from like IGN comments or from Twitter.
Yeah.
You actually had people saying like this is my concern. Or, this is the problems I had, and a lot of people were like trying to find catharsis with one another.
Mm-hmm.
Because they just weren't really sad. Like, I was just so unsatisfied with the ending.
I remember when like a fan theory came out about like the indoctrination ending, and I remember like watching through that and being like, that would be a really cool if the game like acknowledged that as like that's what's really happening, because I think they did a great job of kind of really justifying it. And and so it was sad that they ultimately did not. But like I remember, like that was that's a really cool re-examination of the ending of the game. Even though I didn't have a problem with the original ending, it was like, oh, that that is a better version of events or something like that. I can't argue with like that would have been a better ending.
Yeah, I will say though, I think that, and this is where I come down to it on it ultimately. When they announced the director's cut, I said, well, okay, I'll see about it. And then playing through the director's cut, I'm like, they gave me what I needed, in that this every single decision had a weight to it, had a different consequence to it, and was a significantly changed the universe. Even if the quote unquote worst ending in the director's cut, which is you choose to do nothing, and this cycle continues, but there's a difference because Liara's record that she makes in the third game is put in different places to hopefully be found someday, so that the same mistakes aren't made. And so you continue what the Protheans did in Mass Effect 1. You do your own way.
Yeah.
And even that being like the quote unquote worst ending is still so significantly satisfying in such a great way. So I think when they were like, cool, we're going to give you a, like, oh, this was the actual vision that didn't get cut for time and cut for resource reasons. This is actually like the ending that we like, that you really wanted for the game. I see you being the developers.
Yeah.
This is the ending you actually really wanted. And it reinvigorated my like faith, like, okay, so when they have the time and the resources, this is what they will nail this. And so I am so unbelievably excited to play through 1 through 3, the Mass Effect Legacy Edition, and play it fully with all just everything. And the director's cut DLC being the actual, like, inserted in there for the ending. I'm so unbelievably excited to get to play through all of that one, just all the way through as a cohesive story. And what I really hope happens is that it not only reinvigorates my already existing love of the series, but that I can finally have just like this quote unquote perfect playthrough.
Mm-hmm.
This playthrough of beginning to end. This is what I feel and what I love about the game, and I'm so excited to get to be able to play through that way. Which is weird because I'm so much more excited about this than I am about just about anything else.
Yeah, I mean it's been one of my most anticipated games of the year, certainly. It's like and you know, I think we're gonna have basically a month between that and Ratchet and Clank, which is the next thing I'm really excited for. So, you know, I'm kind of in that, like, I think one of the reasons I've been kind of in a slump and like nothing's really been hitting is probably because that was on the horizon. And so, you know, hopefully I can hop in and just enjoy that and just kind of, plow through it. Because I definitely feel like I'm going to do the same kind of thing. And I'm going to spend time this year basically doing a full Paragon run and a full Renegade run.
Nice.
Because I just, you know, I enjoy seeing how drastically certain things end up as a result of that. And so, just
I would say
great series. I wish, I said this, I think, when I talked about Mass Effect and revisiting Mass Effect a couple months ago on the show, but it's like, it just makes me wish that more games did this giant ambitious thing that they did with Mass Effect, and to a lesser extent Dragon Age, of like, hey, we're going to tell a complete story in this game, but we're also going to like let that be a part of a larger story, and the choices you make in this game are going to carry forward into next games, and they're going to, you know, drastically impact your story. Like I remember going back and playing Mass Effect 2 for the first time with a Mass Effect 1 save file, and just all of the little things that I had done that I had not seen my first time through Mass Effect 2, like even like Conrad Werner stuff, like and just all of like the little miscellaneous characters that you can meet and help out and do like side quests for in the first game, seeing them come back in the second game for just like a little like cameo appearance or something, and just kind of fill in, which like just do not happen if you didn't play game one or do those scenes and stuff. Like I just loved seeing that and seeing that continue on in 3 especially.
Punching the reporter over the course of 3 games is one of the
yeah.
most satisfying things. That when you see her in the 3rd game, you're like, cool, let's go. Not even gonna let you get started. Sock you in the face.
Mm-hmm.
Not even gonna question it.
And she ducks you, and then you can
she ducks you.
You punch her again or whatever. She's like,
yeah, you uppercut her.
Yeah,
and it's like, yes, that's right. I laid you out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's funny because at the beginning in Mass Effect, my favorite thing to do is to play through very Renegade in the first game, and then slowly do a little bit more Paragon in each game to the point where I'm making like kind of half and half choices in 3,
mm-hmm.
where it's like I like this dichotomy of like my character's from Earth. He is an Earth survivor, where like he has only really ever been out for himself, and then that slowly changes. However, he's not been racist. I put Ashley in her fucking place every time I get to, and then I leave her to die with the bomb because I'm not having space Nazis on my ship.
I mean, I don't think she was a Nazi. She was just a racist. But anyway, that's
like saying I don't think this pot is exactly as the same shade of black as this kettle, Trevor.
I mean, like, no, there's a difference between racists and Nazis. Like, Nazis are way worse. Racists are bad, but like Nazis are like it's a Venn diagram kind of thing where like all racists are Nazi, or all Nazis are racist, but not all racists are Nazis is what I'm trying to get at there. Anyway, I love
hearing you defend racists.
Racism is bad. Fuck racists. But actually, I think my thing has for a long time been much more. Racism is just how we view the world, and if we can acknowledge that we are racist and we make we have prejudice, like distinctions based on history and society and stuff, and then like work against them, I think that's a significantly more healthy thing. It's the everyone is a little bit racist from Avenue Q, is that mentality. And the bigger issue is when it gets into bigotry, and like leads to significant negative impacts on people's lives and stuff. And systemic racism is also, a giant part of the problem there. Anyway, but yeah, sure.
The answer,
sure.
So basically
just clip
everything.
This out, and Trevor is defending racism. Whatever, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I played
summary
through,
of this is leave Ashley to die. Don't make that mistake.
In the recent playthrough I've been doing on Xbox, I basically went in with like, I'm gonna be Renegade, but then like at some point, like I max out my Renegade score. I'm like, well, there's no point in me like continuing to make the Renegade decisions from like a gameplay perspective. So yeah, I'll go ahead and like make a handful of like Paragon choices here and there when it's like especially when it's like affecting my team or something like that. I'm like, yeah, no, I want my team to like me and think I'm a good guy. Even if like I don't give a shit about what happens with like these other people or something like that. So that was kind of how I ended up approaching this. And yeah, by the time here I'm in the 3rd game, it's like, yeah, I'm way more like half and half. I'm still like my Renegade score is still like maxed out, but I'm basically being a lot more Paragon in a lot of those other decisions. Anyway, it's fun. I look forward to hopping in to the like basically re-hopping into the games again here this week as we get the Legendary Edition. Did you order yourself one of them helmets that everybody's been tweeting about?
No, Trevor, because I don't know if you like. This is.
I mean, especially when it came out, you were like in between jobs and low on funds and stuff.
Like,
so
I'm like, when the pre-orders came out, Trevor, I was definitely like, I was working as a substitute teacher, so like. The option wasn't there for me.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
That being said, I don't regret it because, like, as awesome as it is, there is no, like, way that I could convince myself. Like, here's the thing. In my closet is a statuette of Darth Malgus from Star Wars The Old Republic.
Mm-hmm.
I have carried that thing through living in in 4 different places.
Mm-hmm. You just didn't want to do that with the helmet, even though I think you absolutely would have played the game on streams and just played it in the helmet, and you would have had fun doing that, I think.
No, because I wear glasses and also it would fog up. I know from watching Josh's video and other videos, it fogs up super quickly.
Yeah, that's fair.
Don't get me wrong, it's awesome. I would love it. But also, like, I'm done buying special limited edition merch shit. I'm 31 years old. I don't have room for that where I live. And where I end up living in the future, I probably won't have room for it either.
I'm 36. I don't have room for it, and I'm still dumb enough to buy it. So, haha.
I see it behind you right now. I see all of it behind you right now.
I mean, yeah, that's like, yeah, that is like my DVD and movie collection and stuff behind me right now. My version of the helmet has not come in. I'm going to be in like wave 2 because I did not buy like the morning when they all went live. I bought like later in that day or whatever. And it does one of those things where I was like, I remember when this first started happening, I was like, fuck, that's stupid. Where it's like a collector's edition that does not include the game. I was like, that's just fucking ridiculous. But then I was like, well, at the same time, I'm going to want to play that game like ASAP. And so I'm just going to buy it digitally. So I like that I didn't have to buy 2 copies of the game. So like I've started to come around on these stupidly expensive collector's edition things that don't have the copy of the game with them. But it'd be especially interesting to see how those play out in this era where like, hey, some of the games are backwards compatible and some of them are not. And do you like, and hey, you can't buy a physical collector's edition if you have the digital only PS5 or the Xbox Series S. So, are they going to do versions of collector's editions that are digital only or stuff like that? Well, we will see. Anyway. Well, I think that can wrap it up for this week's episode. We're both excited about Mass Effect, and we will, I'm sure, report back to people our thoughts on that game in the weeks to come. But yeah, that is going to do it for this episode. An unexpectedly long one, but so be it. Thank you, Cam, for joining me. Let's go around the metaphorical table with any plugs we have. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot. Anything you want to give a shout out to, Cam?
Yeah, the final episode of my Emily is Away Let's Play series is coming out this Thursday. I'm super stoked for everybody to check it out. Even though it was not my first, as I mentioned in this past week's episode, it's not my original playthrough because of
mic issues.
Mic issues. It still hits me in a really deep and hard way. Like, I think that it's a really great ending in a very specific way, and I think the way that I come to terms with it is very excellent. It's a fun conclusion to a really awesome game. So come join me on Thursday as we finish it, and I hope you've enjoyed. And if you are watching this, and you've checked out the series and you've really enjoyed it, thank you so much for watching it all the way through. And thanks so much, of course, massive shout out to Kyle Seeley for getting us those early codes. Really coming to terms with the ending of that game, and being able to speak with him about it was just super awesome. So also side shout out to that News You Care About episode that we just had put up, where it was Logan, Trevor, and I talking to Kyle about the game that he made. Yeah. And the times that we had with it. So, yeah.
We haven't. Maybe we'll have to do a mid-year check-in episode here in the coming weeks for Game of the Year so far stuff. But I assume Emily is Away 3 is probably sitting comfortably in your top 10 so far.
100%. Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
100%. It's interesting. Emily is Away 1 and 2 didn't really break through that for me. They both came out during the super banger years of games. But Emily is Away 3, I think, just takes it to a whole new level that definitely, I think it's sitting very comfortably high in my top 10.
Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting to see what else comes out throughout the rest of the year if it gets knocked from that perch, but cool. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey, and I will kind of echo Cam's shoutouts there for That News You Care About and his Emily is Away 3 Let's Plays. Also, wrapping up this week on Tuesday is the finale episode of me and Logan playing through It Takes Two. So we got two of our long-running Let's Play playlist series wrapping up this week. And I also want to give a shout out to this last week's That D Plus show. We had guests Tucker Hazel and Myron Scott, who had not done anything with us in the past, but they came on and talked about The Falcon and the Winter Soldier with me. So you can go check that episode out. They are, other friends in the Kind of Funny community. So they answered the call when I put out a tweet, and it was cool getting to collaborate with them, and I thought we had a good, fun conversation about Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And then the last thing I want to shout out is I was a guest on the Castle Vault podcast, which is one of our friends that does another Disney Plus centric series. I was on talking The Good Dinosaur with them, and while The Good Dinosaur is not a great movie, we ended up having some fun talking about Mighty Ducks for like the first half hour of the episode, and still talked for like 2+ hours, just talking crap about the movie and some of the things we did like. But it's always a blast. I tweeted out basically they're consistently one of my favorite podcasts to go be guests on, because like for the 2 episodes I've done with them now, it's just been like we immediately just fall into fun rhythms and just catching up and talking a whole bunch of fun stuff for 2 to 3 hours. So check out that as well. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site, and check out thatnerdysite.com for all the latest content from us. If you liked what you heard, once again, please rate, review, like, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, ring the notification bell on YouTube, all that fun stuff, and maybe even consider supporting us on Patreon, patreon.com/thatnerdysite, where every patron gets early access to a monthly bonus episode of this very show. This month's early access episode is me and Logan talking about one of Logan's favorite topics, James Bond, and specifically what makes for a good James Bond movie. We kind of dove into a lot of different elements that make up James Bond movies, and kind of picked and choose, some of his favorites, of course, across the entire series. So go check that out if you are one of our patrons. Otherwise, that will go live to everybody here at the end of May. Yeah, that's going to do it. Thank you again, Cam, for joining me. Thank you, audience, for listening. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.